know week 1 is in the books. Yeah, there you go. You ready for this? I want to just talk about the demonstrations. I don't call them protests because they're demonstrations more than they are protests at this point. So what was your take on what some of the players and teams and organizations did during the national anthem and prior to the kickoff of Sunday's and even Thursday's game?
Well, one thing, Michael, that I always think about with the NFL is that compared to baseball, compared to the NBA, they're the weakest union and the least empowered out of all of our professional athletes. So anything that they manage to get done is impressive. And the precedent was set this summer when Deshaun Watson and Pat Mahomes put together that video and basically put the NFL on notice. It's like, yeah, we're your highest paid players. We're the face of the league, and we think something needs to be done. So Thursday's game with the Texans and the Chiefs, where, look, I knew the Chiefs were going to win. But the fact that you had people booing, you had fans, and I use that term generously, booing at players simply locking arms is a reminder, in case we didn't know, that this was never about how or what people were protesting. It was just a bunch of people saying, shut up, black folk. We don't want to hear about your issues. You're there to entertain and die for us, essentially. And so I was pleased to see the number of players who did some sort of demonstration one way or another. I think it'll be interesting to see if it's anything more than lip service. Look, the NFL, if they actually gave a crap about Black lives, they would do something about how many off-duty police officers they hire and what kind of training is expected of them. NFL owners are basically mini Trumps in the cities and states that they're in. They can have a real influence on Black lives, voting access, healthcare, all sorts of critical issues to their own employees if they cared about it. So I'll be interested to see how much is done above and beyond these players putting essentially their careers on the line to take a knee, which wasn't even possible for them 2 years ago.
Jason, one of the reasons that players across all sports are protesting because of police violence, including the Breonna Taylor in Louisville. Today, there was a settlement between Louisville and the family, $12 million. Police reforms along with that. You watched that. We began the show talking about it, the impact of it, who she was, humanizing her. You watched that today. What did you think of the settlement and some of the commentary around the settlement?
I was extremely disappointed. Whenever you have to think of death in terms of what it's worth, $12 million is nothing. Her mother, her sisters, her loved ones, they're never going to hear her voice again. They're never going to hear her laugh. We've passed her birthday. We still don't have any indictments of the men who killed her. We have a state attorney, a general who's basically sat on his fingers the whole time. And we also have a situation, this cannot be overlooked when we're talking about Breonna Taylor. It shows, once again, that even the blue wall of silence, et cetera, doesn't extend to Black people. She was an EMT, a former EMT. She was part of that collection of firemen, cops, and EMTs that protect the public. So you can still be a part of public safety in America and be murdered as a Black person, and what they'll do is give you 2 barrels of syrup, which is essentially what this amounts to. So I'm not happy about this result. I'm extremely sad, and I think it's important, lest anybody out there criticize, because there's always somebody out there who wants to be critical. When settlements are made in these kinds of cases, it is because the family and the family's legal team has looked at every single legal avenue and recognizes that the structural racism, both the individuals and the legal systems in place, would make it almost impossible to get justice. And that's the most disappointing thing. You settle because you know there's but so far you go. You settle because you know in Kentucky they're going to fight tooth and nail. They're going to push against an indictment. They're not going to hold these cops accountable. And that's the part that's most disturbing. And also important to remember for everybody out there who cares about small government, conservatives, et cetera, that $12 million is coming from somewhere, right? It comes from the insurance fund that the police pay into, which eventually trickles down to the taxpayers. So I hope the people in Louisville are happy about the fact that they are paying off a family for the woman that the cop shot. They're paying for that. The taxpayers are paying to silence a family after their police officers murdered her. So that's I'm never happy with these kinds of settlements, and certainly not in a situation where Breonna Taylor, I don't care what kind of reforms they say they're going to have, the reforms need to start with actual punishment. Anything other than that, and it's an embarrassment and a reminder of the white supremacy we live under.
No, definitely well said. I mean, listen, history has taught us in general not to believe that the criminal justice system, it wasn't designed to serve us, so it can't fail us. So I won't say it's going to fail, but that we won't get justice through the criminal justice system, specifically as it relates to Louisville and the state of Kentucky. We know that the attorney general is in the pocket of the GOP. You know, he's joined at the hip of Mitch McConnell and again, for hopefully another 40 whatever days, the sitting president. But it sounds like, Jason, it sounds like you're pretty resigned to the likelihood that the family, and by extension, those of us who grieve with Breonna Taylor's family, that we won't get both, that we won't get financial restitution as well as substantial charges, let alone a conviction from the criminal justice system. This is where it ends, in your expert opinion.
Very likely, because, you know, the Attorney General Cameron, who Trump name dropped as a potential, Supreme Court nominee. Good Lord, if you think Clarence Thomas is bad, just imagine Cameron, again, who's stunting on the gram with his new fiancée while a woman has been dead and buried, murdered by state-sponsored violence. Once these payoffs are made, once settlements are made, it is very unlikely that the public pressure will be enough to force the state attorney general to pursue charges. We've seen local attorney generals it doesn't have to be an either or. I mean, the woman was murdered in her own home, and then they tried to throw her boyfriend in jail for defending him, shooting a warning shot. It's always amazing to me that the man whose house was broken into can figure out how to shoot a warning shot, but trained police officers couldn't. They had to empty the clip, you know? Yeah. So, I'm concerned that there will be no further pursuit, just like we saw in Ferguson, just like we've seen in Charleston, South Carolina, just like we might see in Kenosha, and just like we see in Minneapolis. There's a difference between retribution and justice, right? We may get some retribution from the standpoint of having people pay, but justice is when people have to face the consequences of their actions. And somebody else, some insurance company paying your bills for murder, that ain't justice.
You know, Jason, there could be even more payments coming, because if you think about it, the way the laws are written in Kentucky, because of that warning shot by her boyfriend, if they fire those police officers, they can say, well, wait a minute, this is, I have the right to fire because I'm defending myself. So if they fire them, they could sue and they could get money. I mean, think about that.
Yeah, let me tell you something. One thing, I'm the most pro-union person that you're going to encounter. Like, as we started a discussion of football with me talking about, you know, the importance of the players' unions and everything else like that. But police unions are out of control. And that's why they can do things like that. That's why they have 30-day windows before they can be asked any questions in investigation. That's why they can be covered. And I've said this all along, because of racism in this country, because only recently have we had the sort of public pushes for reform that we need. Police are public servants who get to behave in a way that nobody else does. And we have plenty of public servants. We have EMTs. We have teachers. I work in Baltimore, and I remember saying at the time of Freddie Gray and how much the police union got involved, and Marilyn Mosby tried her best. But, I mean, she was fighting against a system that was almost impossible to sort of dig your way through. I was like, if I was a public school teacher and I took 20 kids on a field trip and came back with 17, I'm going to jail. I couldn't sit there and tell a jury, hey, it was a rough ride. 3 6th graders died. And that's essentially what the cops were able to do. And then justify it. And their union backed them. And all too often when police are fired, as you mentioned, they are fired, the union fights on their behalf to bring their jobs back. And I think one slightly positive thing that's happened in some of these protests during this pandemic is that you've seen it in North Carolina, you've seen it in different parts of New York, there have been massive resignations of police. And I think that's good, because if the idea of reform makes you think you can't do your job, then get the heck out of the job. And I'll put this out there. I wrote a whole piece about this for The Grill. I'm in favor of defunding the police. I mean, the way the policing works is dysfunctional anyway. It's like having a bad restaurant. People keep getting sick at that restaurant. I don't care how many times you say under new management. You tear it down, you build something new. What we're expecting police officers to do with military training, where we want them to be child care providers, health care providers, and protect the public, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
We're sending good money after bad. And I hope that changes in a lot more cities. Let police do policing and recreate a system that actually provides public service and public support.
I hope that we clip off a lot of clips, and I'm sure this interview will be one of them that we share on social. That is as concise an explanation as you can ask for. And I hope people, when they hear defund the police, they take offense to it, understand what exactly that means, what exactly that defund the police movement is about. And Dr. Jason Johnson, as usual, breaking it down as well as anybody can. Breaking it down so it can forever and consistently be broke, my brother. Listen, hopefully it's the first of many visits to Brother from Another, man. You'll come through again? Good.
Yeah, I would definitely come through. I got plenty of obnoxious sports takes. I'm on that first week overreaction high because my Seahawks actually let Russ cook. So, I'm ready to go.
Okay, well, you know what? We about to talk about Russell Wilson in a little while, man. So you would enjoy that conversation. We're going to give him some love later on in the show. But that's what's up, man. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for following through.
Anytime.
Thanks, guys.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.